Andrea Whyne Martz.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well, Chad. How are you today?
I'm very good. Thanks so much for being here. We're talking about your new book that you have out. We have The Caterpillar and the Butterfly.
Absolutely. Super excited.
Before we talk about the book and how this all came to be, I want to know a little bit about you, where you're from, your background, what's your real job. I want to know all about it, Andrea. Tell me.
All the tough questions are going to start off first. Okay. So my background is I grew up in the heart of the coal region here in Pennsylvania in a town called Mount Carmel. So I lived there my entire life until I went off to college at Bloomsburg University. Go Bloom. And then I ended up living in Coltmont. So I live in Coltmont with my family currently right now.
Born and raised.
Born and raised in Mount Carmel, heart of the coal region. My parents and my dad and all my dad's family are coal miners. So we're very coal region proud.
Well, we're happy you're part of the community.
Thank you.
I want to know about, we wrote this book, and we're going to get to that in a little bit, but did this just come out of thin air? Or tell me a little bit about your passion for writing.
Okay.
And how we got to this book.
Well, I've always written. So I used to, like any kid, I used to channel my emotions into writing. So I actually used to write entire books of poetry. And senior year of high school, I actually published one of those poems. So absolutely loved it, but I didn't want to pursue that for my career. I actually wanted to be a veterinarian, believe it or not. So that's why I went to Bloomsburg until you have kids and then you develop allergies and you can't do that anymore. But the reason I did this was out of necessity. My dad sadly passed and my young son was having a hard time trying to understand what happened because Pap's there one day, Pap's there not the next day. And he didn't understand how to comprehend. And I love our funeral homes. They do such an incredible job, and it's a difficult job trying to help people through that transition. But their pamphlets weren't enough to help me as a parent explain to my kid what happened. And kids are wonderful with all their questions. So I was looking out in the book community to see if we could find a children's book that was faith-based, that helped explain to a child the transition from life to heaven. And unfortunately, I couldn't find any, so I authored one. So this is where this created. This came out of necessity as a parent. I saw my child hurting, and as a Christian, my faith is in my God. And that's where I find my peace and comfort. So I knew my dad was in heaven. I knew he was okay, and I was okay with that. But I needed to help my child find that same peace. So I wrote a book to help kids understand at their level that transition from life to heaven and help them understand that we're all part of a great plan that God has for us.
So the book we're talking about is The Caterpillar and the Butterfly. How old, and your son's Hunter, right?
Hunter.
And how old is Hunter?
Hunter's 20 now. So I have actually been sitting on this book for 14 years. So Hunter was 6 when my dad passed. It was not on my bucket list to be an author. I feel that I was led into this position. However, I love writing and I love drawing and I love painting, and I'm a very creative person. So it kind of fell into my lap this way out of necessity. But it's been truly a labor of love for the last year putting this book together. But the reason I waited so long is, it's a fear because you're vulnerable when you write something that's straight from your heart at such a raw moment. I shared it with all the family. So anytime a funeral happened, I would print out the page and I would hand it to a family so they could read it to their children to help give them peace and comfort. And everybody kept encouraging me to publish it. So after lots of encouragement, I said, I'm like, you know what? What do I have to lose? And I prayed. I said, God, if you want me to do this, you're going to show me a sign. And Facebook, in its infinite wisdom, popped up Christian Faith Publishing out of Meadville, which is a local Pennsylvania publishing company. And I'm like, what do I have to lose? I'm like, let me just submit the book and see what happens. So I submitted the book. And the next morning, that was on Sunday night, Monday morning, I get a phone call from the editor herself in tears. She read my book and she said that it creates such an emotional resonance with her and brought her right back to the time of her father's death. And she said there was such a need in the market for this type of book that she wanted to publish it immediately. So that started the entire process over a year ago. So big changes, lots of work.
So does the idea of this book fly out of thin air kind of thing? We're talking about a caterpillar and a butterfly. How did this story of this book come to be?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. It actually came from a story that my dad told us as a kid. So in our family, our parents didn't protect us from death because we believe death touches everybody. It doesn't have an age limit, whether it's death of a pet or a loved one or a friend. So my dad was always very open and honest. And when we attended funerals, because he made sure as kids we were there, because that's what you do out of respect, he explained to us that if we think of like a caterpillar, that coffin is like a cocoon and that they're not in that coffin anymore. They already got their angel's wings and are already in heaven. So that always resonated with me. So that's where this story came out of, was a story from my own father that I got to tell to my son with a little bit of a different spin to it.
The caterpillar is named Sam.
Yes.
Where did Sam come from?
So I wrote this book for my dad, but I wanted to include my mom. And my mom's nickname for me as a kid was always Sam. And one of my favorite dogs was named Sam. So it just seemed to be a fitting, Sam the caterpillar just seemed like a happy fellow. So I wanted to use Sam.
This is really exciting.
It is.
This is really, really cool. So before you wrote the book, you handed out pamphlets.
Yes.
And now that you do have the book published, what's some of the feedback that you're getting? I'm sure whether it's kids reading the book or parents, what's some of the feedback that you're getting from this book?
I'm getting incredible feedback to the point that it's overwhelming because I ask all the time, why me? I just felt that I was drawn to do this out of necessity for my child. And I'm finding out that it has a bigger purpose of its own, just that book itself. So I've had lots of feedback. My sister is a hospice nurse. So the hardest job ever. And she was drawn to that after our mothers. So both of our parents passed. So my mother passed 3 years ago. So she was drawn to that after my mother's passing, and she works for a hospice company. And I would just receive the demos of my book in the mail. They give you demos to approve. And she had a grandfather with a little boy, and he was in hospice passing away. And she's like, Andrea, I would really love to take your book in and read it to them. And she did. So she read it to the grandfather and the little boy, and the grandfather squeezed her hand as like a thank you that he read it. And a couple days later, he passed. And the little boy was angry and distraught, as kids are, because they don't understand. And the family never heard it. So my sister sat on the floor as a nurse, sat the little boy on her lap, and opened my book and read it with him. And she said he had the most amount of peace that she's seen, and the family was all in tears. So that, to me, brought this entire process full circle around. But I have been sending my book out wherever I feel it's needed. So you can purchase it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. It's on Reader's House. It's in digital and paperback versions. Maybe one day I'll do an audio version. But it has landed in Alaska. It's in Florida. It's in Louisiana. This book has only been out for, 60 days, and I have 300 copies sold. So it's definitely out there helping children and families alone, because adults are reading it and telling me their wonderful, amazing things, that it brought them peace and comfort. So again, it's taken on a life of its own.
This might be a tough question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think your book stands out in the crowded field of children's literature?
That's a great question.
Thank you. I mean, that is a tough one, but you might have said it already, but I don't want to take words out of your mouth. I mean, it is dealing with something that's not so happy.
Right. And I was concerned about that, to be honest with you, because it's a Christian book teaching kids about death, but I also think it's a book to help kids cope. I think that at any age, they don't have to be in the middle of coping from death to understand the story. And talking to the publishing company and just my own research myself, I know that there is not a whole lot of books at that time when I wrote it out in the market. And the publishing company felt that way today. It's why they wanted to do the publication of it, because it's desperately needed. There's so many families, unfortunately, that are touched by death and kids that are affected, and this gives them a good coping skill on a way that they can understand at their level. So it's a fun book with beautiful colored art that I illustrated. And it helps kids understand from a very simple level how a caterpillar transforms into a butterfly. And that process is not something to fear, but it's something to, be thankful for, and understanding that they're all part of a big plan that this world has for them.
You said in your press release to celebrate.
To celebrate. Yeah. It's to celebrate the transformation of life. In my perspective, transforming into heaven is a beautiful thing. Because of my faith, I have peace and comfort in there, that this isn't my permanent home, that this is just a home that I'm going temporarily through. And I'm here to help any way that God needs me to help. And that's what I feel this book is going to do. And I want to celebrate that transformation and celebrate the people's lives that I can touch with the book and celebrate the lives of those that passed.
So, Mom,
yes,
you have a busy life.
I do.
You know, you have a full-time job, which I'm sure is grueling on you at times.
It is.
You have a wonderful, loving husband that takes, that he loves you and everything else. There might be some other moms watching this. What would you say to other aspiring people,
Okay.
aka maybe moms that might be watching this? What would you say to them to go and aspire, maybe writing a book, doing an audio book, drawing, graphic design? Like, what would you say for to the people out there who might be watching? How can they be creative in such a busy world? It's a tough question, but
it is a tough question.
Lend a little bit about how you did it, and maybe why they should do it.
Great question. So the reason I did it, was as a necessity. So anybody can be a writer. And I truly believe that sometimes in our toughest moments, those emotions just flow freely. It's just picking up a piece of paper and a pen and writing them down. And that's exactly what I did. So this book didn't come together at once. I wrote little snippets here and there. And then after I went through my grieving process, I started piecing them all together into a story. And just thinking about what my son would want to hear and what would be helpful for his understanding. As far as the illustrations go, that's a whole other ball game. So I'm a wildlife artist. So I've been drawing and painting since I was very young. My mom used to joke that I would sit there and sketch people on the playground instead of playing with them, because I was always fascinated about movement and with nature, including butterflies. And this pushed me completely out of my comfort zone. So that's the biggest thing I can tell people, is to be fearless. You're only limited by yourself. You truly can accomplish anything you put your mind to. Those wonderful adages that we say, they're honestly true. So I'm sitting here as a permanent testimony of that, because the illustrations I was never planning on doing for this book, believe it or not. I was working with an incredible illustrator with the publishing company, and I couldn't get across what the vision of my head was, like what I wanted. They were lost in translation, so to speak. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to sit out and draw it. I don't do cartoons. I don't draw cartoons, but we're going to figure this out. So after a lot of sketches, because I'm old school, we do pencil and paper, and we came out with the cover art, and I drew all of the characters. And I was absolutely floored that the publisher and the illustrator loved it, and they created the book out of it.
Did you find it easier to do it yourself?
No, not at all.
With the illustrations.
With the illustrations?
Yeah, because you had it in your head.
I did. I had it all in my head. I kind of knew what I wanted Sam to look like. I kind of had an idea. But drawing in black and white was one aspect of this book. Actually putting color into it. So each phase of this book created its own separate challenges. So you have the story, and then they tell you that they're going to break the story down in 12 pages. I'm like, okay, we got that. So then you have to figure out what scene is going to be attached to those pages based on the words. I'm like, okay. So it was a lot of asking family and nieces and kids and kind of having focus groups to figure out, okay, so what are we thinking? Like, what do we want to do? And then it's getting it sketched out in black and white. And then you got to add colors. So do you want pastel colors, or do you want vibrant colors? And Sam, that little caterpillar, went through very different variations of colors. So we went through 3 different colors, and I put it to a focus group of kids that are in the age range, and they chose his color. And that was the one that they most migrated to, and that's what color Sam became.
I know you had this book for 14 years.
Yeah.
But when Christian Faith Publishing was like, yes. Mm-hmm. How quick of a process was that from them having the contents of the book to publishing?
It was a little over a year.
Really?
So yeah, it was a little over a
Because of
year.
the illustrations?
You go at your own pace and depending on how fast things go. So it was when they got the verbiage, you have to go through the whole editing process. And I didn't think there was so much editing in a kid's book, but you want to make sure the grammar is appropriate and it hits all the right keys. So you work with the editor piece first, and then you have to break down the book into the pages. And then you have to do the illustrations on all the pages and work on all the colors and all of the lighting, because all of those things in a book, just like in TV or commercials, are very relevant. So you have to think of the lighting of things, the placement of things to make sure it makes sense, that the story is being conveyed the way you want it to. And I will absolutely admit, being an artist, I was very particular on this book. I wanted to make sure that it was perfect, that I put it out exactly the way I saw it and exactly the way I hope that kids, can take interest into it. But yeah, it was a long process, a full year, a little over a year. So I started in April 23 and the book was published in July of 2024. So very long process.
That's interesting to know. I love that process. And I love you sharing that story about that, because a lot of people think, well, you write a book, but it's out, right? Nope. And that's not the case.
No, it's not the case.
So it was a lot of back and forth with the editor. And did you just work with one editor? Or?
They assign you that once the editor of the actual publishing company approves, they assigned you an assistant. So the assistant is the one who collaborates with the editors of the book, like who does that. And then they set you up with the illustrations. So every piece of it was challenging. So even the illustration piece. So to choose your illustrator, they gave you like 15 illustrating styles, and each one was attached to a different person. So they're like, do you want like a fairy tale version like this book, or do you want like a more like modern version like this book? And everyone, because every artist has a different style. So I'm like, oh my goodness, this is a lot of choices. I didn't think there was this many to go into this. And they're all in the digital realm. So that's another thing too that pushed me out of my comfort zone. Again, I'm old school with paper and pencil, and we're talking about computer, graphics. So once you choose your illustrator, then you guys just start setting it up. And then you have the page and type people who get all the pages set up. So it was a huge process to try to get this done. And each step of the way, though, I can give Christian Faith Publishing so many props. They were there every step of the way with me. I had every opportunity to change things. They were constantly asking for my opinion. So I literally had to approve every single page of this book to my specifications to make sure it's exactly what I wanted to publish. So I love that piece of it.
So it's out now.
It is out.
How do you feel?
I'm super excited. I won't lie. The minute they sent me those demo copies, and it was on Memorial Day weekend. So we were away and I came home and there's a box sitting on it. And my husband's like, there's a big box sitting here. Like, what is in it? I'm like, I have no idea. Until I read the label of it. And I'm like, oh my God, these are my books. So I quick hopped on Facebook and I live streamed it, me opening up to get my reaction. And I was in tears because actually seeing a year's worth of work and everything else and seeing your name in print was overwhelming, but also an exciting journey that I was going to start embarking on. So we're just in the beginning stages of that right now to get this book out. But the feedback has been amazing. Critics have been reviewing it, have amazing things to say, that it's an amazing transformation story, a faith-based story for kids in a way that they understand. They all understand what a caterpillar and butterfly is, and maybe that'll help them, when they see an actual butterfly, find the comfort knowing that their loved one is okay and give them that peace.
So you are going to be doing some meet and greets, and I know you have one coming up in September.
I do.
But I don't want to date this interview, but I'm sure you're going to be doing more.
I am.
Meet and greets. So okay. Walk me through the life of a children's author. Now, so you have the book out. So what do we do to promote it? Is it like boots on the ground, hitting the streets kind of thing? Like meeting the parents and the kids? What do we do?
Great question. It's a little bit of everything to get this book out, to do all the marketing and sales. And I could have used the published company to do all the marketing for me. Yeah. But since that's my background, I've been doing that for about 20 years. I decided that I'm going to market it myself. So I have been going through my church. My church has been helping me market it, going through Facebook. I want to put up TikTok videos and YouTube videos of me reading the story to get the story out there. It's going to funeral homes and different places to really put the book out into the hands of the people who truly need it. Like you said, I'm going to be doing a book launch here very soon, so I'm super excited about that. I have set up all fall different locations between libraries. I will be at the fair as well in the author's booth, doing book signings and meet and greet of anybody who'd like to come out to see me.
The Bloomsburg Fair?
The Bloomsburg Fair. I will be at the Bloomsburg Fair. I'm very excited about that.
That is very exciting. That is very exciting. So now what? You're gonna ride the wave of this? Is there more for Andrea? Like, are you enjoying this process, I should say? Is this an enjoyable process for you?
It is very enjoyable. It's also very scary because it's a lot of the unknown. But again, I'm standing strong. I'm letting God lead me on this journey of wherever it leads. I'm a firm believer that he puts people on my path that need this book. I get people reaching out and saying, so-and-so's child passed away. Unfortunately, I got one of those messages, and he had some brothers and sisters that needed this book. And I sent it out the next day and made sure it got into the hands of the people who truly need it as my gift to them. And I loved the ability to be able to help people, but what is next? I asked God that question. And for 3 nights in a row, I had a story running through my head, Chad, that I could not get out of my head. 3 nights. And I'm finally like, you know what? I need to write it down. So then I was able to sleep. So I wrote this story down, and I'm like, well, it can't have the same impact that the caterpillar and butterfly have. So I let a couple close friends read it, and they were completely got goosebumps and they got chills. And they're like, you have to publish this book. So,
well, okay.
Yeah.
Easier for you to say. Yeah. Okay, I'm on it. Hang on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. I said, so my goal is to give the caterpillar and butterfly its light.
Yeah.
And then my goal is to sell enough books to be able to publish the next one. And maybe we'll do the next one. I have it in my heart that I need to do a series of these. So there is going to be more. And I have the second book written. So that'll be coming out hopefully in a year or so. We'll get that book out. So we might be repeating this process all over again.
Well, not only are you, I see great joy in what you do, but you're helping kids and parents.
Yes.
And through a short story like this is just remarkable. So how can people follow you? What are your socials, I should say, is that the kids say? Yeah. I mean, how can people follow you along with this journey?
Awesome. So I have a Facebook authors page under Andrea Whyne Martz. So if you just search Andrea Whyne Martz on Facebook, you'll be able to follow my entire journey of it. I do have a website linked on Facebook that you could get into my Christian Faith Publishing authors portal. And that'll get you all the links that you need, whether it's Reader's House or Barnes & Noble, Apple iTunes it's on, and also on Amazon. So the books are all there. But that is the best way to follow me. I have tons of upcoming events. I have incredible local community people that invited me to come in Shamokin and Mount Carmel. So I will be heading both to towns to go to local businesses that invited me to come do book signings because they believe in this message too, and they want to share it out in the community as well.
Isn't the coal region the best?
It is incredible.
It's the best.
They are. They are absolutely incredible.
You know, they back you.
They do.
That's for another podcast altogether.
Even Shenandoah. I'm going up to Shenandoah as well, up to their library.
It just fills your heart.
It does.
It really, really does. I want to know, and we talked a lot about the book, and thank you for bringing these books
Absolutely.
for my kids. They're going to lose it. Especially Claire, my daughter loves reading.
That's
so
awesome.
She's going to be really excited to see this. What I wanted to ask you is, what are your hobbies, Andrea? Like you work a lot, and we're writing children's books, and we're drawing for the children's books. What else do you like to do?
My friends will joke there's not a whole lot I don't do. There is a lot I don't do, though. I love photography, so I'm an avid photographer. I've been photographing since high school. So you'll see a lot of my artwork all over the place. I paint murals. So I actually paint it, in Coltmont. There's a huge mural on the side of the building that I painted for them at the Sportsman Association. So I love to design things and do things like that. I paint art whenever I get a chance and I'm inspired to. As far as other hobbies, I love motorcycling. I'm actually a big motorcyclist. I love anything outdoors and hanging out with my puppies, my fur babies as well. And just keeping busy. So the only thing I can't do, Chad, is I cannot sew. So if anybody wants to come teach me how to sew, that would be phenomenal. My husband would love it.
Okay. This is really, really great.
Thank
and
you.
I'm very proud of you. So my last question is this, and I want you to pitch your product.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So what's your sales pitch to me or to a parent that might be interested in this book? What would you say to them?
I'd love to say hello. I'm Andrea Whyne Martz. I put together a children's book to help you teach your children the transition from life to heaven in a way that they'll understand. They'll travel on a little journey with my friend Sam the caterpillar and his mother as they travel through the meadow to see his grandfather's change. And in this journey, they're going to learn that transition from life to cocoon to heaven when they get their angel's wings. And hopefully this will help give them comfort and peace to know that that is a celebration that we should have, that they're on a beautiful journey, and that it's a journey that all of us have to go through in our lives, and that journey will lead us to heaven, to our home, and that we're all part of a beautiful plan that God designed, and that we have nothing to fear. So I hope this helps mothers out there find this book and bring it to their kids to give them that skill. Like I said, whether it is a death they have recently or just wanting to give their kids coping skills for something, because as we know, death does not discriminate. It hits all ages. It doesn't matter. It could be death of a pet or a family member. But I'm a firm believer as a mom that we need to help our kids cope with that. So I hope that this book gives children the peace and comfort knowing that it's going to be okay.
You are going to do great things with this book.
Thank you.
And I want to say thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Very
so
excited.
much.
Thank you, Chad.